10 years of war in Yugoslavia. 4 million people lose their homes. More than 100,000 lose their lives. The atrocities horrify the world.
The year is 1990. Yugoslavia stands on the edge of collapse. Decades of tension are boiling over. Slovenia has already declared independence, and Croatia is next in line. What begins as a struggle for freedom will erupt into one of the bloodiest wars in Europe since World War II, shattering lives and reshaping the Balkans forever. For decades, Yugoslavia stood as a federation of 6 republics, brought together after World War II under the leadership of Josip Broz Tito. Tito's rule kept deep ethnic and national tensions under control, but his death in 1980 changed everything. Without his authority, old rivalries and divisions began to resurface. The economic crisis of the 1980s only made the situation worse, fueling anger and nationalism across the republics. In Slovenia and Croatia, the desire for independence grew stronger with every passing year. At the same time, Serbian leaders pushed for greater centralization, determined to keep Yugoslavia united under their influence. The balance that had once held the federation together was breaking apart. By the early 1990s, Slovenia was ready to secede, and Croatia followed closely behind. The federal government, backed by the Yugoslav People's Army, refused to accept this. Tensions reached a breaking point. In 1991, war erupted in Croatia, a brutal conflict that would tear Yugoslavia apart. The year 1990 in Yugoslavia was full of tension and uncertainty. The economy was in crisis, inflation was rising, and political conflicts between the republics were becoming increasingly visible. Serbs in Croatia felt growing pressure as the Croatian authorities in Zagreb amended the constitution, introduced new symbols, and passed laws that favored the Croatian majority. Some former JNA officers and local leaders established local guards and patrols, while political elites prepared strategies to safeguard the Serbian population. The Republic of Serbian Krajina was formed, encompassing Banija, Kordun, Lika, and Western Slavonia, and military and civilian resources began to be organized to defend the people and territory. At the local level, former JNA officers created command structures, while volunteers and civilians participated in patrols, trench construction, and barricades. During the summer, conflicts spread to towns and villages. Vukovar became a strategic target, a city on the Danube with around 80 inhabitants. Defenders, a combination of police, volunteers, and civilians, organized trenches, barricades, and improvised posts. The JNA and paramilitary units used artillery, tanks, and helicopters, turning every street into a front. Hospitals were destroyed, schools converted into shelters, while civilians tried to save lives through underground passages, basements, and improvised tunnels. Simultaneously, in Šibenik, JNA forces and Serbian positions on the coast and islands resisted Croatian forces. Artillery attacks destroyed bridges and ports, while civilians helped transport food and medicine. Dubrovnik was shelled for months, with the elderly and children living in basements and improvised shelters, while soldiers tried to protect communication lines and key roads to the interior. Fighting was daily. Every house, forest, and road was a potential ambush or combat position. Meanwhile, the international community observed the situation, but intervention was slow and limited, leaving Serbs in Croatia largely on their own. The ceasefires held in some areas but were constantly tested by small skirmishes. Eastern Slavonia remained under Serb control, with towns and villages divided. Refugees from the previous years continued to live in temporary camps, facing harsh conditions. The Croatian army worked tirelessly to strengthen its forces and prepare for future operations. International observers documented human rights abuses on both sides. Small towns along the Krajina border became daily battle zones. Artillery exchanges echoed through valleys and riverbanks. In central Croatia, villages changed hands multiple times, creating chaos and fear. The civilian population struggled to maintain normal life. Diplomatic efforts continued, but compromise remained elusive. The Republic of Serbian Krajina maintained its hold on large areas of Croatian territory. Serb militias fortified positions and continued occasional attacks on surrounding areas. Croatian forces conducted limited operations to reclaim lost villages. These were often met with fierce resistance, resulting in casualties on both sides. Winter of 1993 was harsh, and humanitarian needs increased dramatically. Civilians built makeshift shelters, while relief convoys struggled to reach them. International media highlighted the plight of civilians, bringing global attention. Political leaders engaged in tense negotiations, but progress was slow. The United Nations continued to oversee ceasefire agreements. However, violations occurred frequently, undermining their authority. By spring, Croatia began reorganizing its military strategy, planning future large-scale operations. Training programs improved, and new weaponry arrived from international supporters. The front lines remained largely static, but tension never eased. By mid-1994, the front lines remained largely static. The year ended with neither side achieving decisive victories. Both governments prepared for the eventual resumption of large-scale combat. The year 1995, the Croatian army planned two major operations that would change the course of the war. In May, Operation Flash was launched in western Slavonia. The offensive was swift and highly effective. Serb forces were overwhelmed and many towns were reclaimed within days. Civilians began returning to liberated areas cautiously. The success boosted the morale of the Croatian army and the government. The international community expressed cautious support for Croatia's actions. In August, Operation Storm commenced in the Krajina region. This operation was decisive and involved a massive coordinated attack. Croatian forces advanced rapidly, recapturing key towns and strategic points. Thousands of Serb civilians fled, creating a new wave of refugees. Fighting continued in pockets, but resistance was gradually broken. The fall of the Krajina region marked a turning point in the conflict. The war in Croatia was nearing its end, though tensions remained. By late 1995, only small skirmishes persisted along isolated front lines. Negotiations between the Croatian government and Serb representatives intensified. The Erdut Agreement was signed, paving the way for peaceful reintegration. Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Sirmium were peacefully returned to Croatia. The Croatian army consolidated its control and secured liberated territories. Communities began the difficult process of reconstruction and reconciliation. The nation faced the challenge of integrating displaced persons and rebuilding trust. By the end of 1995, Croatia had regained sovereignty and territorial integrity. The war, which had lasted 4 long years, was finally over. Despite the scars, the country looked toward a future of rebuilding and unity.